Frankenstein opens with letters from Captain Robert Walton to his sister Margaret Saville. In the introduction, Walton describes his exploratory mission to the North Pole. When his ship hits an iceberg and becomes stuck, his crewmen see a giant man on a dog sled. Shortly after, another man appears on a dog sled, and Walton and his crew take him on board. That man, Victor Frankenstein, tells Walton his story leading up to his rescue. Victor takes up the narration, describing his youth and love of science. He describes how he came from a wealthy and loving Swiss family. He tells the story of his father Alphonse and his mother Caroline, two brothers Ernest and William, and the adoption of his cousin Elizabeth. He describes the loving nature of his family and the bond they shared. In school, he meets Henry Clerval, who becomes his lifelong friend. Henry's passion for fiction and storytelling, as well as his warm and caring nature, lay in stark contrast to Victor's egotism and obsession with science. Just before leaving for university, his mother dies. Her dying wish is that Elizabeth and Victor marry someday. Shortly after, Victor leaves for the University of Ingolstadt to study chemistry. An incredible student and researcher, he makes a breakthrough discovering the source of life. During the rising action, he collects corpses from local graves, stitches together an 8-foot-tall body, and animates it. Upon looking at his creation, he realizes how hideous it is and becomes frightened. Repelled by his creature, he runs away and rejects the monster. After walking through the town and finding Henry Clerval, they go back to Victor's apartment. He's happy to find the monster gone, but nonetheless falls ill due to strenuously working. Almost a year later, he prepares to return home, but before he departs, he receives a letter informing him that his brother William has been murdered. The family servant Justine is accused and found guilty of the murder, although Victor suspects it was the monster. To deal with his guilt, he goes hiking at Montanvert, and the monster appears. The monster tells Victor his story of survival, living by a cottage owned by the de Lacy family. There he learned to speak and read, but upon revealing himself to the family, is rejected. He asks Victor to make him a mate for companionship, and Victor agrees. And Victor begins working on the female monster, but destroys it after considering the possibility that they would create a race of monsters. The monster, watching through a window, becomes enraged and strangles Henry Clerval. Victor is accused, but later acquitted, although he again falls madly ill. When he comes back to Geneva, he and Elizabeth get married. The night of their wedding, Victor comes to their room to find Elizabeth dead. The shock proved to be too much for Victor's father, Alphonse, who died shortly after. In the climax, Victor describes how he chased the monster across the globe. During the falling action, Victor's story leads up to the point where he is recounting his story to Walton. He makes Walton swear to kill the monster for him and dies shortly thereafter. In the resolution, after Victor's death, the monster comes on the ship and grieves the death of his creator. He tells Walton he is going to kill himself, jumps off the ship, and disappears into the darkness.